What's up, guys? It's the Minted Caliber here, chilling with S13 the Beast and S13 Tarot, and we're coming to talk about vaping. There's gonna be a little glass of sweet tea, because this last hit killed the hell out of my lungs. But I came across this Facebook page. It says Stop E-Cigs, and how I found out about this page was from one of the vape groups that I'm in. And this post right here says, "What's in the clouds? Nicotine, addictive, slightly." I'll let Taro touch up on that. Ultra fine particles, asthma. I will personally touch up on that because I know the ingredients and where they come from and what else they're using. Acetone, nail polish remover, lead, brain damage, formaldehyde. That one has actually been debunked. E-cigs, not harmless, not healthy. So, babe, go ahead and touch on their nicotine topic.
Okay, we're gonna run through this again. Give me 2 seconds to finish hashtagging because I am trash. I need to. Oh, I can't spell. Okay, fucking answer. Sorry, she likes it. Okay, so we're gonna talk about nicotine and its addictiveness. Okay, so yes, nicotine is an addictive substance. I'm pretty sure that's fairly common knowledge. It is a drug classified as a drug, and we're gonna compare it to caffeine. That's what we're gonna compare it to. So when you look at nicotine in general, it depending on the dosage depends on how addictive it is. Using vaping versus smoking as an example, because that's typically the topic of in ours. You look at a 30 milliliter bottle of e-juice, which is what this is. This does not have any nicotine in it. This has CBD in it, which is an entirely other topic. You would have, so this is 30 milliliters, and it has 0 milligrams of nicotine. 0 milligrams of nicotine, and has 30 milligrams of CBD, but again, that's a different topic. So if you were to put 3 milligrams of nicotine in here, it's 3 milligrams per the 30. So it's 3 into 30, or 12 or 6, whatever your nicotine volume is. So it equivalates to what it'd be, say 0.07 or 0.7?
Let me look that up. No, it wouldn't be 0.07 because 6 milligrams is 0.06 per volume.
The most common one vaped at is 3 milligrams. We'll do it for that one.
I want to say 3 milligrams baseline is probably around 0.03 to 0.05.
And for a cigarette, it was what, 1.2%. 1.2%. So if you know how big a cigarette is, you know that like typically you take in the entire thing in one sitting. When you look at a tank, which is what's commonly used for people, I feel like my tank is leaking. Does juice evaporate?
All right, so
Sorry. When you look at a tank, you're not going to intake the entire amount in a tank at a time.
I actually want to touch on some. So yeah, there it is. All right, so there are approximately 20 drops of e-liquid per milliliter. So using our 24 milligram e-liquid, once again, as an example, there would be 1.2 milligrams of nicotine per drop. So
that's really high, 24 milligrams.
Yeah, that's actually what's in cigarettes, believe it or not.
Right.
All right, but go ahead and continue talking.
Okay, so regardless, obviously, like when you smoke a single cigarette, you're taking in a very large quantity of nicotine really quickly, which is why people, it's like instant focus. It's like downing an entire energy drink at once. Like you can literally feel like your eyes dilate. It's instant. It's that instant gratification of taking in this drug. So when you look at that comparatively to vaping, I'm not dealing with that right now. Sorry if I'm off. I'm just gonna flip my phone over. Because I'm a millennial and I'm easily distracted by my cell phone. All right. So when you're comparing things like that, my brain is scattered. Well, where was I? All right. So when you're looking at beast, yes, help.
You're on the topic of comparing the two.
Thank you. All right, I got it. So nicotine in itself is not classified as a dangerous substance. It is classified as an addictive substance. It is classified as a stimulant and a downer. But is not classified as dangerous. So by putting that in there and being like, oh, it's an addictive substance, yes, it is. So is caffeine. You don't see anybody freaking fear tacticking coffee, do you? No, not really. It's just kind of a free-flowing, addictive mess. So, trying to get back on topic, because I keep losing my train of thought. So you would never intake an entire, I mean, maybe if you like really, really chain vapes, but you'd probably blow out your coil. You're never gonna intake your entire tank, which is at least what I've found is commonly used by people transitioning from smoking to vaping. They typically have a tank. Also, a lot of starter kits, like the AL85 starter kit, come with a tank. So typically, we're going to talk about tanks for that. So, I was like, what the fuck was that? But with a cigarette, you just kind of sit there and you intake all of that all at once. So now we're going to compare vaping to the other forms of nicotine ingestion that are considered safe alternatives to smoking. And we're going to look at like the nicotine patch. So what the nicotine patch does is you put it on your skin and it slowly releases nicotine into your body. And what that is supposed to do is that is supposed to eliminate the jittering, the withdrawal symptoms as you're trying to reduce the intake of nicotine eventually down to zero. But a lot of the reasons why patches and the gum and stuff like that fail is that oral fixation you have for smoking, it's still there. So something that vaping does is it gives you that oral fixation of bringing something to your mouth and inhaling something while still giving you a small release depending on your milligram level, but regardless, like you're still not intaking the shit ton since most people vape in between 12 and 3. You're slowly giving your body that nicotine. So basically all you're doing is treating the withdrawal symptoms and not so much maintaining your very high addiction. I have never smoked. I never transitioned from smoking to vaping. I just have a lot of shit because like people come into like groups and stuff like that all the time when you're involved in your community and they talk about smoking, especially when you live close to the reserve like I do. People talk about smoking constantly. So that's where most of my knowledge comes from. But I mean, Beast actually did that transition and can speak on it if he wants to.
Yeah, I used to. When I smoked, it was at the point where, like she's touching on, saying the addictive part. I know that one because I get to the point where I'd go through Nick Fix, jonesing for a cigarette. I know people have heard the term. I'd be to the point where I'd be ripping up couch cushions. But since I've done the transition, which was hard transition, not to say it wasn't, but once I did get over that, I don't have those anymore. I don't have the experience where I'm jonesing for something. I can go hours at a time without having vaping or anything, unlike I could do with a cigarette. I'd have to have a cigarette every 20 minutes or so. So I mean, it being slowly released in the body, like she's talking about, over time, more so than a big giant hit, basically, of that substance. It does kind of have a different effect. But again, nicotine itself doesn't have any of the issues that pertain from cigarettes. That comes from like tar, ash, inflaming smoke, stuff that we're not even supposed to be inhaling in the first place. So I mean, these are all things that were taken care of because of vaping, I think. But
I mean, inhaling anything into your lungs on a constant basis isn't classified as safe. I have asthma. I take an inhaler every single day so I can breathe, but it has its effects, obviously. It does stuff to your lungs. Taking anything, breathing in anything helps. Breathing in too much of a different mix of oxygen can hurt you if you don't need it.
Yeah.
Right. And that goes off to saying that your inhaler. I mean, I think Alpha has something to say about that. He has
Yeah, I do.
Exactly.
But one of the things they said, ultrafine particles equals asthma. That's not necessarily true, for the simple fact that inhalers, one of the main propellants that's in an inhaler is propylene glycol. So there's that. Now, saying that vaping has lead in it, that's completely asinine. None of the materials that are used for vaping, whether it be the coils or even the actual construction itself, contains lead. The actual body of a tank is comprised out of stainless steel, and the coil heads are made out of, like, I would say, what is it, like 316L stainless steel, like a really light stainless steel. And
Right.
yeah, well, that's pretty much it. It uses Japanese organic cotton. Um, most coil heads, I believe, use A1 camphor, which is what I actually wrap my coils with, is A1 camphor. That's what my coil is made out of.
Well, you can't read it because my camera's really shitty and this is really small, but this does say propylene glycol on it. And this is to my emergency inhaler, which will stop me from dying.
There you go. There's the proof right there. See, Taro, much like me, we work on the basis of facts. The basis of
Facts like
facts.
experience.
You can sit here and say, "Oh, well, one thing does one thing," and you can run with it all you want. But if you ain't got facts to back it up, you're not getting anywhere. So, let's go ahead and take a look at the Facebook page a little bit more, because there's a lot more things that I want to talk on.
Hang on, I want to talk about formaldehyde.
So, acetone. There is no acetone in e-juice, and I can confirm this right here because most reputable e-juice manufacturers like Propaganda, Flawless, and brands like that, even brands like this, Dripstar. So I gotta do a review on that juice as well as this juice. But on here it says ingredients: vegetable glycerin USP, propylene glycol USP, natural artificial flavorings, nicotine L USP 0.6% by volume. So we're going to talk about that 0.6% by volume here.
Okay, so I live in a different country than you guys, and so we have different regulations on stuff that has to be listed. And here, it is a crime to not list what is on things. And if you list, it's worse to list something incorrectly than it is to not have your ingredients on it at all. So because these ones are in-house, I don't have the ingredient list for these because it's on the big bottles in the shop, which I could have looked at. But where the fuck are
Yeah, but I don't think your vape shop would sell anything that could potentially kill you.
No, and what I'm trying to get at is I'm going to read mine, and it's basically going to say, oh, they're right in front of me. I'm blind without my glasses. Ingredients: USP vegetable glycerin, USP propylene glycol, and artificial flavorings. That's it. And then it goes French. It's literally 3 ingredients because this doesn't even have nicotine in it. I added the CBD myself. So this doesn't even have nicotine in it. It's literally 3 ingredients, and one of those ingredients is used in food. Vegetable glycerin is used in a lot of things. I'm pretty sure it's in Jello. Artificial flavorings is anything, really. I mean, that's a very vague subject, but again, that's in a bunch of candies and a bunch of cereals and shit like that. It's typically food grade. And propylene glycol, we just talked about, is literally in inhalers.
Well, I
So
know I can't remember if it was propylene glycol or vegetable glycerin, but I know one of them pumps one of those liquids through their hospital ventilation to filter the air. Which, if I'm correct, is probably propylene glycol because it's
it is,
used as a propellant.
yeah.
So to sit here and say that vaping causes asthma is completely asinine.
Yeah. No. Um,
I do feel like since you started vaping, I do feel like your airway, like your breathing, has gotten a lot better.
it's gotten a little bit better, but mostly just because I'm intaking something else in my lungs. But again, I'm also intaking CBD, which is helping everything overall. And we'll make an entirely separate video on that because
Yeah.
that's an interesting topic. But I want to talk about the formaldehyde for a minute because I find that hilarious. Okay, so like I said, a lot of the arguments I've seen for the stuff like, oh, there's formaldehyde in it, there's acetone in it, and I've spoken to someone in person about this, is stuff like this, and these are house juices. Like I said, these don't have their ingredients on them. It has a custom label on it. And the ingredients are on the big bottles in the shop that they use to fill these, and then they put nicotine in them there. One of the biggest arguments is you don't know what's in that. Like someone just made that. My biggest argument against the formaldehyde thing, and this may be uncomfortable for some people, but I make wet specimens when my um, amphibians or reptiles pass away. What is in this is 99% isopropyl alcohol because formaldehyde is not readily available to the public, or else what would be in here would be formaldehyde. But it is so hard to get a hold of that honestly, I don't see why someone making e-juice when all they need is 3 ingredients that are available, choking, that are available, would ever go out of their way to try and find something so unreadily available and difficult to get as formaldehyde.
Hmm.
There'd be no point. Like I couldn't even get any to freaking preserve my lizard. I had to use 99% isopropyl alcohol, which is fine, but I couldn't get a hold of formaldehyde for that. So that's like my biggest punch in the face.
Yeah, and people say like, "Oh, you don't know what's in that because somebody just made that." Yes, well, typically most shops make their juices right in front of you.
Yeah.
Like when I got my GX 350 from Creative, I was watching that. She was adorable, nonetheless. But I was watching that little black chick. She was sitting there. Well, I say black. She was mixed. Besides the point, race is not. This isn't a racial argument. She was cute nonetheless. But I was sitting there watching her. She was mixing up the juice right in front of me.
Yeah.
Fucking strawberry cheesecake, and that shit was amazing.
I'll be right back. Carry on.
But you see what they put in. And any reputable vape shop. Now, there's a lot of shady vape shops, and Beast will agree with me on that one. There's a lot of shady vape shops out there that would probably try and do some fuckery shit like that. But most of the shops you go to, they'll typically make the juice right in front of you, or they already have it made. And then the fact of the matter is if they already have it made, then people's done bought that juice. They've done vaped it. Now, if somebody had a problem with that juice, they would file a complaint against the vape shop. And every vape shop that I've went to that makes custom juices, that includes Chuck and Clouds and Triple Juice Vapor over here in Missouri, all had really good ratings on their in-house juices. I personally, when I first started vaping, I got a bottle of Goananas, which was one of their custom flavors that they sold as an in-house line, which was fucking awesome. But to sit here and say formaldehyde is in vaping, the only way formaldehyde could actually be present is if you're burning the cotton. Burning cotton does produce formaldehyde as well as other carcinogens. But as an experienced vapor, like Beast, we know where our limits are. So it's not like, and this build is actually universal for either regulated or unregulated. But if you have a build that's specifically set up for a regulated or unregulated mod, and it's specifically set up for that, you're not going to put it over onto something like this and vape it at 130 watts, especially if it's a series box mod. You're building up at a higher resistance. You're not going to take like a 0.5 resistance and vape it at 130 watts. It doesn't work like that. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more. I already spoke on the lead and the nail polish. Actually, I covered all this. Now this really pisses me off. Now, Bish, you agree that you did watch Rip Trippers from time to time, right?
Yeah.
All right. So did you see that post I tagged you in of them showing him like when he had his beard and then apparently rage vape or whatever the fuck they want to call it. I guess they're trying to compare it to steroids now, which is fucking hilarious. But it pisses me off because Rip Tripper makes these faces because he's what? A comedic YouTuber that happens to help people with vaping. He's a funny ass guy. But the fact that they're trying to demonize him for making a face like this is so sad. This is before and after long-term vape addiction. You can see the vape rage in the eyes. We need to put a stop to this new drug epidemic. It's not an epidemic. You know, there's a lot more people who are still on cigarettes compared to vaping. Babe, because you know this, what's the world's population?
7 billion?
7 billion. So there's 7 billion people in the world. And you roughly have, what, a few million that are vaping? So that leaves the rest of the other billion people that are still smoking cigarettes. It's roughly 7 million, or roughly about a couple million people who have actually switched over to vaping. I don't know the actual statistic, blah, blah. You get what I'm saying. But I don't know the exact ratio, but there's still more people who are smoking. So how is this a drug epidemic? A drug epidemic is something that is sweeping the nation one by one, and everybody's doing it. That's a drug epidemic. Take cocaine, for example. That was a drug epidemic. Meth.
What about the drug epidemic going on right now with prescription drugs and opiates?
Exactly.
I mean,
or how about the drug epidemic where people are taking like NyQuil and shit and making meth out of it?
I'd like to touch the prescription drug epidemic.
Go ahead.
It's not a secret to you guys. I end up in the hospital fairly frequently. I was in the hospital yesterday for a concussion, and how easily they give you narcotics or they give you opiates or they give you stuff like that when you're in the hospital is like extraordinary. Like when I went in there, they're like, "What's your pain scale?" And I said, "I don't know, like a 6 to 8 out of 10." Because my head was ringing, I couldn't like taste anything. Like I hit my head really hard, and I was immediately brought to the hospital. So I was still like, my head was ringing. Like it was within the hour that I saw the first doctor. So within that hour, I'd hit my head that hard against a metal wall. So he's like, okay. So they send me for something, and they bring me into a room, and they're gonna put an IV in me. And I looked at them, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, well, we're putting in an IV to give you like painkiller." And I'm like, "What are you trying to give me?" And they're like, "Oh, we're trying to give you Dilaudid." And I was like, "Why are you trying to give me Dilaudid? Because I hit my head." Now, if you don't know, Dilaudid's a narcotic, and I don't like it. I don't like it. It makes me really high. I do not like the way it feels. It does not do a lot for me for pain, so I don't even find it like useful. It just makes me really high. It I'm not aware of where I am. And I said, "Do you need an IV for the CAT scan?" And she said, "No." And I'm like, "Then you're not putting an IV in me. Like, if you want to give me pain medication, like, give me Tylenol or something. You're not giving me Dilaudid because I hit my head. I'm having a hard enough time seeing right now because I'm dizzy without you injecting me with a freaking narcotic." They do that every time I go to the hospital for pain, because I don't go to the hospital until I'm in absolute agony, because that's the kind of person I am. Or if someone saw me get injured and I have to go. They always try to give me the highest form, like the base level narcotic. And I don't want it. I really fucking don't. I'd rather be in pain than you fucking fill me with this shit. And that's part of the problem, is I see a lot of people, like when in the city I used to live in, when I used to go to the hospital, I'd see the same people there all the time because they got injured and they wanted drugs.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it starts there. So if you want to go on about a drug epidemic, go on about the fact that the hospitals are way too lax with their freaking narcotics.
Well, they did. The doctors and nurses that try to do that, there is what's referred to as pill pushers.
Yeah.
I used to have a doctor who's from India. His name was Dr. Valinki, believe it or not. It's a fucking weird ass name. But like my grandfather can go to him and be like, "Oh, what you want? What you?" This guy push fucking drugs because it's whatever sells the most.
Mm-hmm.
He would literally push pills onto you, and it's like, just give me a little something for pain. Instead of just trying to ask me what I want, why don't you go ahead and make your fucking diagnosis?
Right.
So yeah, those are commonly referred to as pill pushers. Because narcotics sell. Narcotics is a big fucking industry that makes millions of dollars on the fucking
Here's the thing.
drug app.
We're gonna come full circle again. Here's the thing. It's not even so much that there's an issue with vaping. Most of these people just want to keep supporting the tobacco companies. And honestly, I don't care if the tobacco companies lose money. I don't care. Like, people literally die from smoking. It's not immediate, because if it was immediate, no one would do it, but it's slow going. So people try to get away from it. If they're trying to do something that's even a little bit healthier than smoking, why are you trying to bash them? Sure, okay, I get it. There's a lot of, especially teenagers, who hop on the vaping bandwagon. They get the 0 milligram juice, and they do it because it looks cool. I don't really agree with that. I wouldn't have started vaping if it wasn't for the fact that CBD exists and I felt it could help me. But I understand that reasoning. But trying to vaping as a whole because people try to use it to get out of things that are worse for them is very sad, actually.
Yeah.
Think as a community and as people, we want to help other people live longer. You want them to quit smoking. You see, it's easier to quit vaping than it is to quit smoking because if you go from that concentrated percentage and you manage to get yourself down to 0 milligrams, which is what a lot of people's goal is, as much as they sometimes they stay in the community, but there are people who have taken themselves from that extreme all the way down the line of vaping to 0 milligrams and now don't vape at all.
Yeah.
You're discouraging those people who would want to use it as that stepping stone to be completely free of having any substance use. And that's what I find really wrong with it is they're trying to use a fear campaign and they're trying to smear it, and there's not a lot wrong with it. Honestly, I spoke to a lung doctor. I don't remember what they're called, but the doctors that look specifically at your lungs not that long ago, before I started vaping, because I used to smoke pot, and when I told my doctor that, they're like, well, that can be really hard on your lungs, like, when you're going right from, like, that plant, it can get, like, really sticky, and, like, it can get in your lungs, and it's not all that great for them. I get what you want out of it, but there's other things available, and I wanted
This episode
to
of D
initially
News is
try
brought to you by
Charlotte's
the
Web,
Toyota Prius.
which
Let's
is
lead
this
the
thing that
way.
you
You
drip
see them at
in your
work, you
mouth.
see them on the bus. I've even
You
seen
can
them.
do with CBD as well, but I don't like the idea of dripping it into my mouth.
It's the e-cig pod.
I do the same thing. So it's easier on your lungs to inhale something like this than it is to inhale smoke or even pot smoke because it's thicker. That's a thicker substance. It's getting in your lungs. It's not good for them.
And I want to touch on something because I don't think I may have touched on this in the past, but as I have more vaping friends now, which is honestly good in my opinion. Obviously, you're not a friend, you're my fiance, but besides the point. So, babe, you know who Lacey Green is, right?
Yes.
The all-righteous feminist that doesn't shave her
Yes.
damn armpits? That's besides the point. That's just nasty. But you remember the channel was called Seeker, and they used to like do D News, which is like Discovery News or some shit like that. Well, and they made a video. It's like the dirty truth about e-cigarettes. And at one point in the video, she said that people who are trying to quit smoking by using vaping often failed. And she showed like this bullshit ass graph behind her, and it's like, oh yeah, well, people who vaping isn't successful at getting people to quit smoking. Oh really? Because I'm a part of a group that has a little over 14,000 members in it that have successfully quit smoking. But you know, I don't honestly. If we're gonna touch on politics while we're at it, I don't think it's really the Republicans who are actually trying to ban vaping. I think it's the liberals, because they're the ones who are having their pockets lined with the FDA's money. But it's besides the point. But this article that D News or Seeker or whatever the fuck they're called, it's bullshit. Beast has successfully quit smoking by vaping. I know a lot of people who have.
Yeah.
And on the discouraging part, and you like how you said people typically, like, some people will stay in the vaping community, it's because they switched, like, instead of chasing the nicotine, they switched it over to be a hobby, and they compete in cloud competitions. It's literally a hobby for them, and you're like sitting here like, there's so much worse things in the world. Gun violence, rape, murder, even drug addicts who do meth, crack, and all this other shit. But you want to demonize vaping. And let's get real here. What's really worse, vaping or smoking meth? Anybody got an answer? Smoking meth. I would rather be dependent, and you know I'm not dependent on this, because you can ask Sarah, there'll be some days where I don't even vape half the day. Or I can go like 2-3 hours without vaping.
I don't bring my vape to work with me.
Exactly. But I mean, if I was to be dependent on this, I'd rather be dependent on this than, say, cigarettes or chewing tobacco. And as you said about the whole oxygen argument, and I see this a lot, people say, like, the only things your lungs are made for is oxygen. That's actually not true. Our ancestors have adapted over time from the very beginning. Their lungs have developed and adapted to the air that we breathe now. Our lungs were never meant to really breathe anything, but it just kind of adapted itself. So that argument's blown out of the water. It's like, oh, our lungs are only made for oxygen. Our lungs weren't originally designed for oxygen either. How the fuck they survived? I don't know. But that's the thing about evolution. Your body adapts over time. So like when you first start smoking, and yes, I have smoked in the past. I'm not gonna deny that. I started smoking when I was 18. Smoking wasn't for me. I went to smokeless tobacco, and I'm honestly still struggling with smokeless tobacco, to be honest. And that's another thing. People think that, and I see people all the time, non-smokers or non-dippers. They'll be like, "Well, you're just trading one addiction for another. If you want to quit, just quit. It's not that simple."
It's not, and anyone who says that has never had a real addiction in their life. See, like I said, I've been in a lot of group situations where people come in and talk to either my class or my school or whatever, or a program I'm in. They talk about smoking because we're really close to a reserve. Like every other person here smokes, and this one person, the last person I watched a presentation on, she literally said, "I've never had an addiction before, but I know it's not as simple as just put it down. There is a lot of other steps, like something that works for somebody might not work for somebody else. There's a lot of steps, and it can be incredibly discouraging. Just telling someone to stop doesn't work." But yeah.
Yeah, and we'll use nicotine to start Get to my throat. But we'll use Kyle as an example. Kyle says he wants to quit smokeless tobacco. But it's like what? He dips what, every day, babe?
Pretty much.
Like, granted, yeah, I dip every day as well, but how often am I actually buying cans of dip compared to e-juice? Like every
Not
other
that
week?
hard. Yeah, once a week, once every 5 or 6 days.
And there'll be sometimes where we're just sitting on the computer and I don't even pick up the can because I'm not addicted to it like I used to be. The addiction is still there from the tobacco itself, but I don't crave it as much. And it's just, and you know, I see a lot of people like Shippo. Shippo, for example, he's like, well, I thought you were. He's like, well, I still dip, and he tries to make fun of me all the time, and he fucking fails. Beast will tell you that, and Taro will tell you that. But he's like, I still dip because I don't have enough nicotine in my e-juice. No, I still dip because it's a fucking addiction, and it's a very, very nasty addiction. Now, I don't want to get into like religious thing because I'm not religious whatsoever, but I say it as it stands. Tobacco is the devil. Once it gets a hold of you, it's not letting go until you force it to let go. And that goes for cigarettes and chewing tobacco or smokeless tobacco as a whole. Once it gets its grip on you, it's hard to get rid of. And B said had mentioned about the whole propaganda bullshit after we tried to make this video like 5 fucking times. But I was talking about like they're using the same argument that they use for cigarettes for vaping. All they did was just change the labeling from a guy holding a cigarette to a guy holding a mod or something, or like an e-cig. And then you see a lot of those like no smoke or like no vaping posts, and they literally market it like I think they just put like a little extension on it to make it look like a tank, but it shows the vapor coming out the end of the e-cigarette, and I'm thinking to myself, that's not how that works. So, anything you want to touch on there, Beastie Mode?
No, I think you pretty much covered it on that one.
So, but you know, vaping's not as bad as people make it out to be. There's no lead, there's no acetone, there's no formaldehyde, it's none of that stuff. Now, I will take up for dip in one regard. You know, a lot of people said that there was fiberglass in dip. That's not true. Those little shiny flakes that you see, that's salt crystals. That's what they use to cut the inside of your lip. If you tried to use my grandfather even explained this to me, and he's against smokeless tobacco. He calls it worm dirt for crying out loud. But he said if there was fiberglass in dip or cigarettes, especially with cigarettes, your lungs would be cut up. Fiberglass is really sharp. Your lip, the inside of your lip right here, if you got fiberglass right there, your mouth would be full of blood. So I will take up for cigarettes and dip in that regards, but everything else, cigarettes are just far more harmful. And you know, and I like how they push the narrative that they say, I forgot how they say. Let me go back up to the thing. E6 not harmless, not healthy. Okay, we never said they were harmless. They are 95% less harmful than cigarettes. They are 95% healthier for you than cigarettes. It doesn't mean that they're completely healthy, but you have a 95% reduced risk of actually killing yourself. So, I think that's pretty much it though. And Beast has got his awesome ass Cloud Beast. And I got the Cloud Beast competitor, which is the Milo 300. And she's got the baby Beast. She's got the baby out of all of us. But on another note, Beast, you would say that the Milo 300 is a good competitor to the Cloud Beast King. Anyways, guys, this is the Minted Caliber, Beast and Taro signing out.
Bye.